So don't have a brew, because this isn't technically a brew time, considering I've just done a brew time because I've moved to London. So I'm just going to do a quick roundup of Google I/O because I haven't actually done one, and also I want to try and get back into actual YouTube and doing some research and doing the shit that I need to do, and also keep up to date with what is actually going on in the tech space, which I haven't been doing, which is kind of like a bit shit of me. I've been too busy with work, too busy just basically doing my own thing, commuting, whatever. So I'm going to get back onto the actual tech train and kind of go back into it. So Google I/O. So Google I/O happened, I think it was last weekend or this week, some point, 28th to like the 30th or something. It may have just been the arse end of this week. But there's loads of really, really cool things that happened. It wasn't as cool as last year when they announced things like Android Wear and shit like that. But anyway, we're going to go through some of the most important things that I think you should probably look at and you should really know about, and we're going to go from there. So Android M got released, or at least it's in developer preview now. So Google announced this at their keynote. Basically, so I'll go run through pretty much what Android M is going to bring to the table. App permissions based on per element, or on every single bit they need access to. So before, when you used to install Android apps, it would say that this app is going to need this kind of level of permissions. You press accept, job done. But what they want to try and do, what Google want to try and do, is get away from just saying yes to everything. So saying yes to, so for instance, if you installed WhatsApp and it said that it needed access to your phone, the phone element of your smartphone, to allow you to call people, you could say, no, I don't want you to do that because you've got no reason to have access to that. Which is kind of really cool. So, and it's similar to if you don't want an app to use your microphone, even though it asked, well, before it used to ask you for your microphone access when you install the app. You don't need the microphone app for anything within the app for the functionality. So for instance, if you installed a game and it said that you needed access to your microphone and the game had no element of it that required access to your microphone, you could disable it, and that's really cool. So there's really, similar with GPS, it's similar with loads of things. So it's a really good way for users to kind of dial down the kind of access they want. Now, this is cool for the likes of me and you probably watching this, but general everyday users probably are not going to give a shit. They're probably just going to go, yes, 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 whatever, have access to the entire farm, because users are idiotic and they couldn't really give a shit and they don't really know the ins and outs of what things like GPS would be able to do, or the phone access we'll be able to do. And certainly some apps will probably then move to a system whereby it will say, if you don't let us access to this specific thing, these elements of the app won't work. And there's certainly in some cases where apps will require access to the phone element of, say, your smartphone, and it's only a game. There's a reason why it has to do that, and it's to do with the dependencies that it needs to be able to run. And that's certainly true with some messaging apps and other bits and pieces like that. There are certain dependencies that require access to the contacts group, and equally to the phone access. Giving access to the phone element of that allows it to do what it needs to do. That's certainly the case with WhatsApp and a few other kind of messaging apps. Anyway, I've kind of like, I'll talk a little bit too fast and I'll calm it down. There's a new Chrome service allowing apps to access stored information, even if I can even actually properly speak. So, you remember back in the day, well, not even back in the day, like now, let's look at like a custom Twitter app like Plume or Falcon or Talon or any of the other ones that come about. When you try and log into it, it'll redirect you to a web page to log in to Twitter. So what Google wants to do is to allow, number one, the app to make a Chrome tab look like part of the app and not an extra Chrome tab, which is what it does look like. It also wants to give apps access to stored information such as password, auto forms, or other kind of stuff. So for instance, you had 3 Twitter apps installed. This is not going to be the average user, but let's say I had 3 Twitter apps installed. It redirects me to a Chrome tab within the app, and it can access my stored password and credentials, so I don't have to constantly re-enter my password for every app I use. This is similar to Facebook, so if there's a Facebook app that needs access, or like an app that requires access to Facebook, or some other third-party service that you need to log into that requires a Chrome tab to be able to do it, it can access your shared information, your stored information, which means that you can log in without having to fanny around with passwords or other shit, which is really quite cool. And obviously, because it's with Chrome and because it's secure, you don't have to worry about that, you know, apps having access to the actual stored information, which is really, really sweet. Android M is also going to allow you to have access to proper support for fingerprints, for fingerprint sensors, which is kind of cool. And like, I think fingerprints with Android are kind of a gimmick until I mention another thing in a minute, but we'll get on to that. Because like you look at Samsung, they did it, and HTC have done it, but they've done it with their own kind of proprietary systems, and it kind of like a bit, like it's cool, but it's like, well, you kind of want it actually embedded with Android so that you could do two-factor authentication and many other funky things. There's going to be better app-to-app linking, certainly means you can share between apps quite easily, a lot like what Apple iOS did, but kind of Google did it before them, and it's kind of going to be just better in every way, so you can kind of share across multiple apps, different things. So for instance, if there was something that needed access to Facebook elements, it could then link in with the Facebook app and other bits and pieces, and certainly within sharing, which is quite cool. I don't know why my voice kind of dropped there, or kind of like raised up, like my voice was dropping. Better battery life, which is cool. It's going to do this weird deep sleep thing, which is pretty sweet. Android battery life is pretty shit generally. Whether or not that's because me as a power user uses it too much, I don't know. But certainly my phone lasts not very long. It like lasts half a day, then I have to charge it. Well, it lasts more than half a day, but if I don't charge it at that half a day, then when I go home, it will be dead. So it's kind of, yeah, I'm hoping that this actually improves battery life within Android, but probably won't let it last an entire day, which is kind of a bit of a shame. And if you want to play with it, and if you want to have a play with the developer version, the developer preview of Android M, you can get it on Nexus 5, Nexus 6s, and Nexus 7s, and Nexus 7s, Nexus 9s, although chances are I suspect somebody at XDA developers will probably port it to allow you to play with it on something like a HTC or any other device ever, probably. And even probably on Nexus 7, I suspect. So Android Pay, now this is something that's quite interesting. So, you know, Apple brought out Apple Pay, and Android had NFC and Android Wallet for a while, and it kind of sort of didn't really work, and not everybody supported it, and it was kind of a bit shit. So, Android Pay is coming out, which is kind of going to be like Apple Pay, but kind of better, hopefully. Is a little bit copying Apple, but I'm hoping that either Apple or Android or Google manage to get their shit together to actually create something that works that you can use anywhere. So, it's going to get banks on board to allow you to kind of link your account with Android Pay, which is kind of cool. Certainly within the US, if your bank supports it, it'll be really, really sweet. It may or may not replace Google Wallet, which is kind of good / bad. Google Wallet was always one of those things that a lot of scammers used to use for, well, for scamming shit, basically, and paying for shit, and because it's quite easily hackable, and it was kind of a bit meh. It wasn't any good. So, you know, Android Pay may end up replacing Google Wallet, which is kind of not necessarily a bad thing. Google Wallet was kind of like PayPal by Google, but it was a bit of a shit version of PayPal by Google. The idea behind Android Pay is that it's going to be a framework that's easy for everybody to use. So if a store wanted to implement Android Pay, it should be easy and straightforward to use. Similarly, if an app wants to use it, it can do that as well. And you can also pay with a fingerprint. Now this is what I was talking earlier about fingerprint integration. So basically you unlock your phone, you tap either via your fingerprint or via some keypad shiz, tap it onto the payer, scan your fingerprint, maybe, maybe not, and then you're paid. It also allows you to have access to a temporary credit card, so you add your credit card information to it, and it gives you a temporary credit card, which then if your phone's stolen, for instance, you can then wipe it and it's all good and you can use a new credit card. And also because it's called two-factor authentication via fingerprints or a PIN, then it means that somebody doesn't have to necessarily have access to your physical phone, but also has to know your PIN and also has to have your fingerprint. So unless they have a gun to your head, they can't actually use any payment features within your phone, which is really cool. Google briefly mentioned NVIDIA Shield Android TV, which is cool, but kind of pointless. So Android TV has never really been a thing. Like, Chromecast came along and kind of replaced Android TV, and it's doing a really good job, at least when it actually fucking works, which is hardly ever. Chromecast is really cool. I do have Chromecast, and when I have internet here, I will set it up, but Chromecast as a hardware thing is shit. It doesn't work half the time, it crashes, there's lots of bugs with it, and is generally, from a hardware standpoint, is shit. So one of the benefits of the NVIDIA Shield version of Android TV is because the hardware is going to be absolutely great. So Android TV's been around for a while, and it's kind of come and gone, and it's been a bit shit, and it's been a bit meh. But basically Android TV is like Android, but for your TV. So it's kind of a bit like Boxy Box, kind of a bit like Chromecast, but kind of sort of better. It allows you to do gaming on it, it allows you to do loads of other things. But the thing is, Android TV's never really got anywhere. It's never really become a thing. What I'd like to see is Android TV being kind of like Chromecast, but a better version of Chromecast, a slimmed down version of Android that allows you to use a TV as a smart TV, does gaming, does all these funky things, and is not going to cost you an arm and a leg. I want it to be like a set-top box, like everything else, that allows smart features that are cool. Because everybody's doing smart TV. You have an Xbox, you have a PlayStation, you have Chromecast, you have Amazon's thing now. You have inbuilt smart features within the TV. I want to see Android TV doing something different that nobody else is doing, which actually is probably not going to happen properly. Now, if Nvidia do this shit properly, it'll be fucking amazing. If they don't do it properly, it'll be shit like all Android TV has been before. So hopefully Nvidia can actually kind of use their expertise, create some really decent hardware and create an overlay that does gaming properly, does Android TV properly, and allows the platform to actually take off and be something, or for it to die of death and never come back again. We don't need Android TV, we don't need anything like that. We already have Xbox, which can do all the TV shit. We already have PlayStation 4, which can do all the TV shit. We already have smart TVs that are never kept up to date, which are shit. We have Chromecast, we have Amazon Instant Video, Fire Stick, Majigger, we have the Fire TV shit. Either do something that nobody else has done before, or can the fucking idea in the first place. Like, Chromecast is cool when it works, which is rarely ever. But just don't bother creating a new system and like trying to develop a system that's kind of dead anyway, with hardware that may or may not be powerful, that you're never going to keep up to date. Like, you may as well just be like every other smart TV maker, aka Samsung, aka Sony, aka every TV manufacturer, and everybody that's making their own smart thing, like Roku or whatever. But do something interesting, do something that's original, don't just copy everybody else, and don't try and do your own thing, because it's pointless and waste of time and money. That was a rant, but it's a good rant, I think. Anyway, there we go. Google Expeditions. Now, this is a thing for schools that allows you to use Google Cardboard and an Android device to take virtual field trips within a school environment, which is quite cool. I don't actually like the idea of electronics in the classroom anyway. For me, as somebody that I'm going to justify my credentials in how I can kind of do this. As part of my degree, we did a lot of education study, we did a lot of psychology, we did a lot of sociology, and certainly a lot of independent research outside of that on education as a thing anyway, which is kind of the reason I didn't go into education and why I didn't become a teacher, because I don't agree with the education system in the UK. I don't think that electronics are they are good from a learning standpoint. So electronics and technology in the classroom is great to enhance learning, if it's used in the right way, but certainly not all the time. It should be maybe a once a month thing. There's lots of interesting research on how kids are interacting with electronics and how they're disengaged from the classroom, this, that, and the other. And that is mainly because the society is shit as a whole anyway, because kids go home and they'll play Xbox and they'll watch TV and they'll do things that aren't kid-like. When I was a kid, and when probably you were kids, depending on your age now, what did we have? We had games consoles, we had things like that, but most of the time we were out and about. We were playing playing football, we were playing rugby, not once a week, but every fucking day. Like, summer holidays were, like, my parents told me to get the fuck outside. Like, go outside, go and play. That's what we did. We didn't go and sit inside and watch TV all day. You know, we might watch films once in a while if it was Christmas. It certainly was a thing, because you couldn't go outside because it's freezing cold, or it's pissing with rain, more than likely. So this is just, like, it's good if you did it once a month. If you did it once a year, you brought out the Android Cardboard or Google Cardboard, you brought out a land of Android devices and you said, we're going to go to Rome today, we're going to see the Colosseum, we're going to do this, that and the other. That's cool, I understand that. But let's not make it a norm, especially when you look at the short-sightedness epidemic that is generally around and about. I would much rather kids actually go on field trips as opposed to being virtually there. It's not, as an education tool, it's probably not a good thing. I don't think you get the same sort of sense. Like, fair enough if it was for a school that had hardly any money and couldn't actually afford to go to, like, New York City, for instance, or some other part of the US, or to go to a zoo or to do whatever. But they have enough money to buy these Android devices and Google Cardboard. It will be an initial outlay, it will be very expensive, but over the course of a year, 2 years, it will certainly pay for itself. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it is. But from an education standpoint, how much you're going to take away from that, I don't know. Certainly, if you look at research done on education software, It's not as good as having an actual physical teacher there telling you how to do shit and teaching you and you learning in a more natural way. So yeah, it's cool, but it's not really a thing that I think should be in the classroom, at least from a personal standpoint. This is me, based on the educational research that I've done, based on my degree, based on personal experience with scouting. I would much rather see people going out and about. I'd much rather see Google create a system or a set of resources that are available to schools in terms of physical buildings or people to go around and about, say, the US or the UK or wherever, and teach them something like developing or something within the tech space, or not even in that. Use Google Maps, for instance, and do something really cool with that and kind of take them physically somewhere out of the classroom and into the wild and just go this, that, and you know, just something that's less electronic. I want to see less electronics in the classroom. I want to see more teachers in the classroom. I want to see more interaction with kids. I want to see kid interaction. I want to see, that sounds wrong, that's not Jimmy Savile-esque. I want to see schools be engaging with their kids. I don't want them to be whatever. This is very un-Google I/O, but this is kind of a rant that I wanted to do, but there you go. This is moving on then to the Family Star system. So it shows that developers are following the new Family Star requirements, which means that basically they're family friendly, they're kid friendly. That means that they're not going to be, I don't know, dialing out to the internet. They're not going to be showing pornographic information, whatever. I've not looked at the requirements. It's probably some bullshit thing. But it's, you know, so for instance, if you had like a kid app and you had a kid developer, they're only going to be, you know, be doing things that kids are going to be safe within, if that kind of makes sense. Universal Android campaign. Now this is super, super cool. So it's for Android developers and it allows you to control what you spend and where you can spend your money in terms of advertising. It's going to be across YouTube, Ad Mobile, and also search. So Ad Mobile is kind of like AdSense but for mobile, and it's kind of quite cool. So within apps and shit, and within mobile web pages and stuff like that. And oh, there's quite a low flying plane overhead. Considering we're not really that close to an airport. Well, I suppose we're closer to an airport here than I was in Cornwall or anywhere else. Well, actually Gatwick, but then that wasn't, they didn't have planes flying that low. It's weird. Anyway, so this is quite cool for Android developers. It allows them to spend the money wisely, know where to spend it. Google's going to manage it all. Great. So that's quite cool. Google Cardboard now supports iOS. That's pretty much it. They're also going to expand, basically, because there's apparently 1 million users currently at the moment. They want to expand that to another 1 million and do it in a kind of a better way. Maybe support some more devices and support some supports iOS devices as well, which is quite cool. It also means that, you know, if schools use Google Expeditions, it means there's more devices available to actually use Google Expeditions with, which I don't necessarily agree with. But anyway, there we go. So Google Jump is another thing that was announced at Google I/O, certainly within Keynote. And it's basically a platform that allows, an open source platform for 360 virtual reality kind of camera systems. So this is if you paired, like, I don't know, 5 DSLRs together and you somehow had a piece of software running in the background that combined all the images into one video, that could be Google Jump. They showed a really cool kind of GoPro system that had, I don't know how many, several GoPros linked together with some 4K-ness. And kind of bundled them together, use some software in the background to create this virtual reality YouTube shit, and it's really cool. It's kind of like a really good way of allowing kind of like a platform that doesn't really exist yet, because there's lots of proprietary platforms. If Google can make this thing good, then yeah, I'm all for it. But it's probably going to be another one of those Google projects, probably going to die a death, and we're never going to see really the light of day. Google Brillo is really, really cool. So this is a mini version of Android that integrates with all things Internet of Everything, which should make things easier. Now, this is something I mentioned before, and this is something I think it was when the last developer conference for Apple happened. So the last developer conference, the Worldwide Developers Conference for Apple, I mentioned this then. We desperately need a home automation standard that has a common SDK, that has a common programming language that works in a similar way, so that every device that we have that's connected to the Wi-Fi and that is part of home automation can talk to each other, and it's fantastic, and you can use any app you want, and it's really good. So Project Brillo is basically kind of like what everybody else is trying to do, which is create one kind of platform that does everything for Internet of Everything. Microsoft is doing it as well, loads of people are doing it, to allow one thing that they commonly use, which means that you could have a light switch, a fridge, a TV, and something else, I don't know, heating, that all uses the same platform that's controlled by one interface, which you can use on any device you want, which is super cool. But it never fucking happens, and it won't ever happen because everybody uses different devices. If Project Brillo was used by every single device ever, or was supported by every single device ever, the chances of that then being able to be ported to Windows Phone and then iOS, or even just iOS, outside of the Google system, is unlikely. Let's, for instance, suggest that many... I mean, number one, you've got to get Internet of Everything people to sign up to your shit. That's probably not going to happen because they're going to have their own proprietary shit because they don't want to be sharing with other people, even though it would make it better for them, even though it would make it easier for everybody else. You look at Nest has got its own proprietary system. You look at things that allow you to control a kettle, that's got its own proprietary system, its own proprietary app. It's the same with every other Internet of Everything thing, like fridges. Samsung created a fridge you can tweet and shit, but it's using its own proprietary system, which you have to use its own proprietary app, which you may or may not have to use as a proprietary device with to control that thing. It's not going to happen. I'd like to see it happen. I would love for Apple and Google and Microsoft and every other smartphone or smart or big tech company to use the same platform to create this platform that's open source and great, that everything can use and you can use it on any device. But it's not going to happen, and it's a real shame because that's what we need. Internet of Everything is never going to take off if there's only proprietary platforms that use it. It's like smart TVs. You don't buy a smart TV because you want smart TV-ness, really. You buy a smart TV because usually it gets included. It's never updated. It's usually proprietary to that specific TV. You can only use it if you've got a specific phone, maybe. If you've got a specific interface, you've got specific apps that you use. That's not the shit I want. This is why I love Chromecast. Chromecast is one device that uses, admittedly, just Android and iOS, which is cool, and it allows multiple apps to use that system if those apps support it, which they will do if they embed that kind of code into it. So it's really cool, but again, it's like one of those things is it going to happen? Probably not. Google Now on tap, pretty cool, bit of a gimmicky thing, not necessarily worth mentioning, but I'm going to mention it anyway. Searches across your digital fingerprint and gives you contextual notifications within specific apps. So, for instance, if your friend Clara, or whatever, I don't know, your friend Susan, there's always somebody called Susan, isn't there? Who else has already got a friend called? There's always somebody called Susan, there's always somebody called Karen, and there's always somebody called Jill or something. You've got a friend, or even like a man's name, Paul or Bill or some generic name, Mohammed, which is the most common name in the UK apparently at the moment. Anyway, so say for instance Jill emails you some show, or emails you, I don't know why she wouldn't text you, but say she emails you and says, here's a show, should we go and see this show? Google Now will then give you notifications as to when those shows are, how long it will take you to get there, blah, blah, blah. You might be within WhatsApp or Google Hangouts, and somebody might ask you, can we go and see a show tonight? And then Google Now will be able to then see what you're doing within your calendar and tell you whether or not you can make it, how long it's going to take you to get there, yada, yada, yada. Quite cool, kind of gimmicky. I don't use Google Now. I think it's a waste of time. It's just kind of pointless. It doesn't work properly enough. If I was in the US, fair enough. But it doesn't work nicely enough. I'm in London and it still doesn't work nicely enough. It doesn't use tube maps properly. It's slow, so I have to use a proprietary app for that shit. It doesn't integrate with mail properly. It doesn't integrate with tracking properly. So if I want to track a parcel, I have to go into a proprietary website to track the parcel, not within Google Now. Some things do work, but other things don't. It's the same with flights, it's the same with train times, it's the same with everything else. Some things work, some things don't, and therefore it's kind of pointless going down the Google Now route. Project Vault is the last thing we're going to end on. It's quite cool. Again, it's probably going to be one of those gimmicky things that's never actually going to take off anyway, but it's super, super sweet. So there's going to be a super secure micro SD card, which is quite small, it's like 4 gig in size, with two-factor authentication. It runs its own proprietary OS. You load it, you put your shit on it, it boots up. So say, for instance, you had a load of photos, you put your photos onto that device within Android, for instance. You plug it into another device. It's got super fast encryption, well, super secure encryption even, two-factor authentication with, say, like a fingerprint, or a PIN, or a password, or something like that. It'll boot up its own OS, so it's not actually accessing Android, and you access that, you look at what's actually stored on there. It's super cool, it's super secure, and it's quite a sweet little system and solution. Although Android encryption is perfectly acceptable, like Android encryption is the dawn, you pretty much can break. It's the same with Apple encryption as well, pretty much unbreakable, which is super, super sweet. I've talked for far too long, so I'm going to leave it here. I think that's pretty much it. I do need to do some more videos about many things, but we shall carry on with actual brew time later on. So, apart from that, I shall catch you in a later video.